In 1977, a new art space opened in Dingwalls Road, East Croydon. It was named the Warehouse Theatre and wasn't too far from the YMCA building. It specialised in introducing works by new playwrights. At the time, I had no idea what plays were produced there or who the writers were that penned them. What I did know from Valentine's brother-in-law, Papa Cass, was that the owners of this new enterprise leased its upstairs storage space for late-night reggae jams. Naturally, Valentine and I had to be there, even if it involved sneaking out in the middle of the night. From Shirley Oaks, my trod along the Addiscombe Road was much longer than Valentine's. He lived about 10 minutes away. I had grown quite a bit in recent months, so even if I was detected, the Shirley Oaks supervisors couldn't have stopped me. I'd lost my fear of them. Plays normally concluded around 10 p.m. By 11, sound systems pushed the props aside to make space for a dance floor. They strung up the equipment and set up the speaker boxes. They darkened the windows with black paint. A small unlicensed bar stood at the back. If my memory serves me well, they charged a £1 entrance fee. The club was called Rainbow, and you could only access it from an outside back staircase. The owners didn't want the clientele of the new club walking through the lobby and the theatre. Before Rainbow, if a reggae head wanted to spend their late nights listening to reggae, they had to travel to Brixton. That was too far even for Valentine and me. With Rainbow, we had somewhere local where we could pay homage to the music we loved. Papa Cass's Arrows and Jeffrey Haywood's Jarocca were the sound systems that played on my first night at the club. Valentine gained free admission because he helped lift Papa Cass's equipment into the space. I had seen Jeffrey Haywood at Shirley Oaks. He dated one of the girl residents there, and he also played football with the older guys. He was a very talented baller. It was quite a thrill to have a real sound system owner among us in the black cultural wastelands of Shirley Oaks. One of the initial tunes Jeffrey played on my first night in Rainbow was Alton Ellis and Rankin Trevor's You Make Me Happy. This new version of the song, produced by one of the very few female reggae production producers in Jamaica, Sonia Pottinger, was exquisite. Alton Ellis's smooth vocals rode over a rocker's rhythm with a deep, satisfying bass line. Valentine and I begged Jeffrey to rewind, and he dutifully obliged. As I skanked away, I simply didn't care that I was outside Shirley Oaks past midnight and my curfew had long gone. Rankin Trevor's toasting and rapping was equally captivating. Once I bought the 12-inch vinyl, I can't tell you how many times I practiced Rankin Trevor's rhymes. When I finally returned to the Shirley Oaks grounds, the complex was eerily quiet. Foxes went about their business without too much concern. I kept to the lit road as I couldn't see the mud paths through the bushes and woods. Ravens carked and flew overhead, and for some reason they gathered on the roof of the primary school. I like to think they enjoyed reggae too. When I entered Holly House, no light was switched on, except for the bulb that lit the path to the coal bunker. Miss Joyce Cook, in a long dressing gown and hair roller cap, stood at the top of the stairs with her arms crossed. She glared at me as I climbed the steps. I paid her no mind because I knew she couldn't do anything to me anymore. I brushed past her and went to bed. I could hear her footsteps padding away along the hallway.
Alex Wheatle,
Yeah,
also known as Alex.
that's
Good
right.
to see you.
Good to see you too.
Really good to see you. We're here to discuss your newly published memoir, Sufferah,
Yeah.
memoir of a Brixton reggae head. I cannot believe it's your 18th book.
Nor can I.
It is shocking. Before we get into it, you had the foresight to ask author, playwright and journalist Vanessa Walters to write the introduction to your memoir. Her introduction alone is riveting, is insightful and a powerful mini history lesson on the mighty impact of Jamaica and reggae on the world. But she also beautifully unpeels a multi-layered meaning and interpretation of the term Sufferah. Your memoir title. So I'm just going to read a bit about what she says, because I think we hear that word. There is a great affinity of that, term and identity in terms of the Rastafarian movement and reggae. But I think that just her take on it, I'm just going to read bits of it because I think it'd be really good to just set the scene for us, really. She says, certain parallels might, I suppose, be drawn between the Sufferah and standard issue superheroes. Like Superman, the Sufferer is disadvantaged from birth, sometimes lonely in their predicament, often on the outside looking in longingly. She also said the Sufferer must also uplift humanity either within the pages or beyond, and that the Sufferer by definition is seen as antisocial, viewed as unkempt or aggressive, mentally impaired, as the Rastafarians of Jamaica, the original persecuted sufferers, were judged to be. And she then winds up by saying they kick and scream their way onto the page, yet we like them immediately, possibly recognising the part of ourselves that resists conformity. Why is a Sufferer identity and reality so important to you and your writing?
I associate it with my reggae identity that I first clung on to when I was a teenager, 13, 14 years of age at school. It spoke to me. It kind of said, I belong to something, where previously I didn't feel like I belonged to anything, whether that be as someone, a movement or anything else, or even a type of music, So I think Vanessa captured that beautifully. That is the way I felt. I felt like I was from the outside looking in. Even when I was a kid, I think I described in the book that on every other Sunday they would have visiting days, and I would observe other families come and visit the children who resided in the children's home. And so I was always wondering, with me not having any visitors, what that felt like, what that kind of experience like, and would that offer me some kind of protection in the predicament I was in. And so I wasn't aware of the term at the time, but from then I was a sufferer because I was the outsider, I was the antagonist, I was the angry one because I felt different to everybody else inside my own environment.
And angry, understandably, because of the relentless racism that you were exposed to and told to either ignore, or you were the problem. No one dealt with it.
Yeah, I was it was kind of drilled into me that I should be grateful. The fact that I was receiving 3 meals a day. I should be grateful for the bed that I was sleeping in. I should be grateful that there were people prepared to look after me.
At Shirley Oaks, obviously,
this is Shirley Oaks
yes,
in Holly House. And so they try and condition you to think that way from my earliest memory, from 5, 6, 7 years old.
While you're being brutalised, but you're being well looked over.
Being brutalised almost every day. And so
by
in
Miss
my
Cook.
mind, I kind of accepted that. I didn't question it. I thought, well, at least I'm having dinner tonight. At least I'm going to have breakfast in the morning. At least I've got a bed to sleep in for the evening, So that was my childhood mentality. But it is the way you can be conditioned in any kind of institution, whether that be a children's home to a prison or even an old people's home. Like we've seen some appalling circumstances, haven't we, in recent years? What can occur in institutions like that?
I mean, we know some of your story, from the Small Act series curated by, Steve McQueen, and the fact that you, during the process as a consultant on the series, discovering, let's write a story about Alex Wheatle's life while you're sitting there, which was obviously written by Alistair Siddons. That came out in 2020 on BBC One. And we were exposed to, we saw the racism, we saw the police brutality, we saw the failures of the care system and the education system in terms of your lived experience. And I'm curious because up until that point, we hadn't had a memoir from you, could have, but hadn't. It'd been fiction primarily. I mean, did the positive reaction to that episode, the series, but particularly the Alex Wheatle episode, did that galvanize you to say, you know what, I want to take control of my story?
Yes, it certainly did. It gave me that encouragement, that boost that I needed. And also, friends and people I worked with were wondering, Alex, what else was there? Because in just an hour plus, I think it was 63, 64 minutes, you cannot squeeze everything in. And my young life was so dramatic and traumatic that there was so much more to know. And so, at that point, I decided, you know what, let me offer some more context, especially about the way my parents first met, the reason why I ended up at Shirley Oak Children's Home, and so forth.
From the age of 3?
From the age of 3, yeah. And so, with the extra boost, if you like, because I was always somebody of quite low esteem, so I was thinking, why should somebody be interested in my tale, kind of thing. That was my thoughts as we went into the Small Axe episode. Even then, even 2020, I was thinking that my story wasn't quite worthy. But once it was broadcast and people immediately said that, Alex, this is incredible. We should have known this before. I thought, okay, I'm now ready to put more meat on the bones.
Though Sufferah, your memoir, is rooted in trauma and adversity, it's also, it feels to me, a love letter to Jamaica,
Yeah.
To reggae, to Jamaican people, and to the oppressed, and to the sufferers in us all, and as well as our innate powers that we don't realise that we have. From your fellow reggae head, Valentine,
Yeah.
who could have been a top flight cricketer, to Tony Parks and his legendary afro,
Yeah.
right? And his exceptional sprinting skills, and your undeclared first crush on Carol Robinson, even though you told her many, many, many years later, due to your shyness. I mean, I experienced a lot of mini heartbreaks as you did. I mean, is that something, do you agree about the fact that as alongside, the trauma, it feels like a love letter to me, yeah.
It was a love letter to those emotions that we all share. I mean, it's not necessarily exclusive to those people who are born into a life of suffering. We all go through these emotions, don't we? We all get our heart broken. We all suffer these maladies, kind of, as we struggle to try and figure out what life is all about. And so I guess with me, it was almost like my whole kind of birth experience, if you like, my childhood experience was like a ship being blown out of the water. And so how am I gonna live now? Now the ship's gone down. And so I'm looking for a raft. And so this raft came in the shape of music in Jamaica. And so I clung on for that for dear life. That gave me some kind of sense of a direction of where, what I should cling to or what I should pass on to. And so everyone needs that. Everyone needs that. That could come in the shape of a dear uncle if you don't get on with your parents as you're growing up. Everyone needs some kind of life raft. And I had that with the introduction of Valentine introducing me to reggae and speaking to me about Jamaica and his family and so on. I thought, wow, this could be me. I could hold on to this too. And that's what I did. So I remember the Olympics was every 4 years, wasn't it? So I wasn't cheering for the English runners. I was cheering for Don Quarry and runners like that. I didn't even remember Don Quarry.
I do.
The famous Jamaican sprinter. I think he won a medal in the Olympic 200, 76 or 72. So I was cheering. Wow, because I like him. I thought, yeah, I belong to him. I'm more him than whoever ran for England.
Yes.
And so I clung on to these little islands, if you like, these little rafts that show me any part of Jamaica or show me any, and obviously Jamaican music that offered me a bigger raft. I thought, wow, I've really found my tribe now. So I felt much more assured, if you like. I didn't feel like so much like the outsider looking in, always observing, always nothing going on for me, but it's always happening for other people. I'm part of it now. I'm part of society, at least my little part of society. I can make a claim to it. I can stake a claim and say, I'm Alex Wheatle now, you know, and I'm part of this. You cannot ignore me anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, when you think about being in Shirley Oaks, and apart from the odd black child, I mean, it was just you won. You know, you were on the outskirts of Croydon, but in a very white, brutal,
Yeah.
racist, demeaning, diminishing world, where you, what was your identity? You are a black man, a black young man, with no representation or reinforcement or affirmation at all, isn't it? And I suppose in a way that leads on, and you're saying about the importance of reggae, you know, that reggae saved your life,
Yeah.
you know, and it was your university, and it gave your emotions roots. And you can clearly, I feel, set up a reggae degree effortlessly, because the amount of detail, and I come from a family who loved music, and we had reggae on all the time, and you know, the Sunday charts, and it made me, Sufferah made me want to seek out reggae artists. I've never heard of the 15, 16, 17 trio you mentioned.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, who are they?
They were big at the time.
Well, I missed them. I mean, you know, and so I'm like, and you being there in the room with Just Shaka, who we lost in April, watching him setting up his sound system,
Yeah.
and then how mesmerized everyone was, you know, and, you know, also, you know, known as Zulu warrior, and the fact that your style was inspired by Gregory Isaacs, who was a staple in our house, you know, yeah, if you want to speak more to that in terms of just how deep and all-encompassing your relationship with reggae was, not just the music, the fashion, and we're talking now about being in Brixton, because then you discovered Brixton. You had, you know, places in Croydon where they used to have the raves and the, you know, the reggae dances, the blues, that you turn up, and I think you, like you say about, you found your tribe.
Absolutely. Those days were fun, to be honest. Fun, great fun.
Like a peaches.
Yeah, and sometimes we would snip off the label of Farrah trousers.
Oh God,
because they're
Farrah,
only
yes.
small, and stick them on your cheap. And your cheap, I cannot remember the store we used to go to. I think maybe CNA to get my slacks from, because obviously they were cheap. So I used to cut off the label there and stick on the Farrah ones. It's like, yeah, these are Farrahs. What's your problem, you know? So it was a lot of fun. I was just like I felt like any other kid there, who just wanted to identify myself with the environment where I was living, and Brixton at the time. And people forget that Brixton was a fun place. Yes, obviously we had to run away from the police every now and again when we're having a dance, but most of the time we had raucous fun. We really did, and I wanted to be part of all that. I wanted to be, you know, a pivotal figure in all of that. I wanted to belong. I wanted to be as funny as, you know, the banter as what my new friends had. I wanted to speak like them. I wanted to walk like them. I wanted to dress like them. And so obviously there wasn't so much money around, so you got to improvise, haven't you? And I think that carries on to this day, where youngsters now, you know, who cannot afford the brands or whatever, they improvise too, don't they? So we did exactly the same thing. I think there's a young mentality, isn't it, where, you know, you just want to conform to what is trending right at that particular moment. And I was no different. Me and my friends were no different. And our idols, but this weren't Gary Glitter, this weren't Jimmy Osmond or whatever. Our idols were Gregory Isaacs, mainly because he was the style icon for any reggae head. He really was. You know, with a wide brim hat, the suede, the casual walk. He was a good-looking guy. You know, we just wanted to be all Gregories, if you like.
Voice like butter.
So so if you went Bally High on in Streatham on a Sunday night, you know, where it was Sweet Boy night, you had to dress really good. You saw about 100 Gregories in the dance. It was kind of hilarious, really. But hey, you know, that's what we all wanted to be.
But also, I mean, it's funny because I did mention the fashion, but the lyrics saved you, because then when you had to find a way for your emotions to make sense, it was the lyrics from the songs that offered you clarity and maybe saved you from yourself in a way.
Yeah. And for me, it was no different from the people in the children's home telling me to look at my prayer book or analyze my Bible, read certain tracks from the Bible. Reading lyrics to reggae songs was, for me, exactly the same thing. And the truth is that when I read these scriptures and everything, they didn't really speak to me. So I could never be religious in that kind of way, because I thought, this is not about me. This is about people 2,000 years ago living in a place where I've never been or never visited or don't even look like me. So it was very hard to relate to get into the psalms and the scriptures and everything else when I was forced to go to a Catholic church.
That's one of the stories I think that broke my heart the most, interestingly, because you were going through a difficult time at school, being forced to defend yourself from racial abuse and so on, and aggression from the other kids, and being told to ignore it by the teachers. And I remember it's Miss Cook,
Yes, Miss Cook.
who ran Shelley Oaks and encouraged you to go to Catholic church. All of a sudden, it's like they thought that would just transform you in some way. I just remember you going, that it's despite all that was going on in your fraught relationship with her, you went, you listened, you thought, oh, maybe there is something in this, based on what the priest was saying about everyone being welcomed. I always remember this, everyone being welcomed, God's house. And then you having a word with the priest afterwards. And I just thought, what you did, that vulnerability in the sense that you were open, saying, is there a place for me in God's house? I won't take up much room. I haven't got much stuff. I thought that was so beautiful. And then his response just pulled the rug from under you, by saying, it doesn't work like that. So, so again, this performance, I suppose in a way, this lie, saying, this is for everybody. You then were staking your claim, and him saying, well, basically, in saying you don't have a claim.
Yeah.
And that broke my heart, and then you just left and that was it,
Again, I was looking for a raft at this point. I thought, well, okay, they forced me to go to this place. Let me see what I can get out of it. How old was I? 8, maybe 9 years old, something like that. And I remember there was a certain line that the priest used in his address to the congregation. There was an argument with Jesus and the disciples that Jesus had no time to speak to the children. And then Jesus said, let the children come unto me. I'm not sure that's correct, but that's how I remember it. Let the children come unto me. So in other words, let the children, allow them to come to me and I'll speak to them directly. You don't have to be a buffer. And sometimes it's a disadvantage to read as well as I did back then, because I could read really well. And so when the priest would address the audience, the congregation, I would look for that sermon in the Bible, and I'd find it and I'd read it to myself, and I'd try to make some kind of sense of it. And I thought, well, this is the Bible, this can't lie. How can this lie? And so when he's saying that everyone's welcome in God's house, and I would see that replicated in the Bible, I thought, why aren't you matching that? Why aren't you coming up to that standard? And from even then, I was thinking there's something wrong with institutions, because they're not matching their deeds with the words that they're saying to the congregation. So even then, in a strange kind of way, I became political activated.
Another thing I want to just bring up for those who I'm sure will get the book, but what was a really pleasant surprise are the photographs and the fact that you managed, considering, how long you had to wait to actually access your files.
Yeah.
The photographs of your mum, Almira, your dad, Alfred, pictures of you as a baby and in Shelley Oaks. How on earth did you manage to mine those photographs? I mean, it makes the book all the more richer, but it was also a surprise, bearing in mind what you went through. So I didn't think you'd be able to access that many photographs. Yeah.
There's one good thing about institutions is that they keep everything. I mean, school reports, old photographs, school photographs. So there's so much more I could have put in. So I was very fortunate to have those photographs of me when I was very, very young. And when I first traced my dad, Alfred, he had a selection of photos that when he first arrived in the UK he had taken. So I had that. It was my sisters who presented me with photos of my mother, Almira. So that was a blessing. Thank you very much. And again, you clutch onto those, and they become life rafts, haven't they, for me in a way. So I love my photograph because I grew up not having that. So you will notice around my house, around my environment, I have loads and loads of photographs, whether it's on my laptop or whether it may be on a key. My wife Beverly, she got me a saving thing where I've got all my photos there, every decade, every situation, whatever. So it's one of the joys of my life that I can look back and enjoy that now, with something I never had. Because sometimes people with families they take for granted what they had when they was young, whether that be photographs or certificates from school, mementos like that. I never had that. I never had that. So that's why I cherish them so much.
And it's something that I think most Caribbean people from my generation, which is your generation, had that. I mean, I've got, they've got the photo albums they have to replace now because the plastic that covers the pictures are curling and browning, and every card I've ever sent my mum, Christmas card, every report she has, so I think it's interesting about how that's something that you value, maybe for different reasons than maybe myself, but it's brought you into the fold in a way. It's brought you into the fold because that's what we do.
I'm a member
it's
now.
important. Yeah.
I'm a member now. And I remember first going to Valentine's house.
Yeah.
And the same photo album that you described, he had exactly the same.
Yeah.
And sometimes these photos weren't clear. Sometimes they were unfocused. But this photo album was cherished. It was cherished. And
well used.
Yeah, well.
As soon as you go to someone's house, they give you the carrot juice.
About exploring the Caribbean experience for the first time. Valentine's mother had this room that no one was allowed in. No one was allowed in, and that's where the photo album was kept. I had to be invited in before I could have a look. And I thought, wow, so what I discovered is that I'm not sure if it's the same for other cultures but my first experience in Caribbean culture was how much they cherished photographs and mementos, anything from Jamaica and so on. That really struck me. That really struck me, and something that stayed with me.
We were here. And the importance of family, and I think also it's a way of expressing what you can't say to each other, because I think that your journey, a lot of it sounds like the observational side of you was also building your emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And I know that, a lot of, us, in my case, Jamaican background, food was how love was expressed, music was how joy was expressed, and photographs was around the importance of our legacy and the fact that we existed, and very important. And I think now we're doing everything digital. I think now people are moving back to getting things printed because it's so important. I want to sort of wrap up with Vanessa Waters again. I mean, in the introduction, she asks, in relation to you, how on earth did he make it?
It's a very good question.
Yeah, so, yeah.
I think I listened a lot and I observed a lot. And when you grow up without any kind of form of affection, or you don't know what love is, you've got to observe it, haven't you? You've got to try and experience that in some kind of way. And it's when I first started to see the humanity that's in the world that changed me. Because when you're in an institution, sometimes you don't see any humanity. But I think at the end of the book, I describe how the owner of a newsagent's give me a paper round. He didn't have to do that. I was this black kid, and most of the shops wouldn't even allow a black kid or anyone from the home to enter the shops there, but he did. I don't know for what reason, but he did. He saw something in me that you thought, you know, let me give him a paper round so he can buy his own comics rather than spend half an hour reading my
Reading.
material. So for me, that was an act of kindness that I'd never really experienced before that point. And there are small acts like that a child will see and observe and will take in and will not forget. And I think it is that compassion that seeped into me, and I said to myself, you know, the world is not totally evil. It's not totally cruel. There are good people out there, white, black, whatever, who will help you on the way. You know, if you go about your life in a positive way. There was Simeon, there was Valentine and his family. And so, you know, luckily enough, fortunately enough, I've managed to surround myself with kind people. Even in my Brixton days, you know, kind people who wanted to set me on the right path, who wanted me to do well. And I thought, you know, this is something that I should take, you know, notice of and acknowledge. And so that gave me the impetus, the encouragement, and the belief that it's not all crazy out there. It's not all people who want to downpress you. It's not all about Brixton police wanting to brutalise you, or institutions want to, you know, disignore your pain and your trauma. And so that's what gave me another life raft, if you like. That yes, I can express myself now. I can be Alex Wheatle, you know, instead of Alex. I can be the, you know, the expressive side of me, and I can show that to the world and not feel ashamed, and don't have to cower away in a corner, you know, because sometimes I felt that my voice is not worth listening to. Who's going to listen to me anyway? You know, I went through all those awkward moments, low esteem and the rest of it. But the kindness that people showed me that my life was valuable. And that was a very important transition for me. You know, my life is valuable. Simeon used to tell me that I don't care about Prince Charles. I don't care about Princess Anne. Your life is just as valuable as those folks. And I used to laugh, you know, but he was trying to build me up. He was trying to build up my low esteem and trying to express myself to the fullest of my potential, because he saw potential in me. And that's the other thing. Again, when others see potential in you, it's another life raft, isn't it? That blown up ship, and you're trying to scrabble around in the water, trying to survive. You know, when someone showed you potential as a young person, that's an incredible thing, especially when no one has displayed it before. And so, as I've always done, I hung on to that, and other life rafts that I mentioned already. And so when Vanessa talks about how or why, I think that's it. That's one of the main ingredients for it.
Alex, as always, a pleasure, and thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for me too. Thank you very much.